So it's Tuesday, April 4th. So this week we want to introduce a theme of respect and protocol for our discussions and our language work and class time. And so there's a few things I'll talk about to introduce the topic, and then we'll have a discussion. How do we teach it to our children? And then I'll introduce an article for you to read for homework that we'll discuss on Thursday. And so when we planned for this, Shakhsani Keek and I talked, and we wanted to make sure that we make it clear that the reason we want to talk about respect is not because anyone in here was disrespectful. We know you're all respect, self-respecting people who treat others with respect. So we're not talking about it to discipline you. We just want to share how we can pass it on to young children because it's so important, and it's just something that should always be talked about continuously. And we want to make sure we're doing that in class. Also, we're curious about how people in class learned respect, and we just want to talk about like how do we overcome some of the things, for example, shorter attention spans of younger people just because of the way media is presented to them and how they're used to it. um, and the point that Shaksani Keek made in our own discussion in our prep period, that in the old way when she was growing up, if older people repeat something, it's because it's not being heard well enough. And so she'll talk more about that. But to start off our discussion, Sakshani Keek is gonna share how she was taught respect and how to teach it to the younger generation. Um, and I made a couple slides to take notes for Lingit terms and also um, just the things she shares. And after Shakhsani Keek speaks, I'll ask Skaideu to share a few phrases that she learned from Anyat Fahaj, and then we'll watch a video of George Ramos talking about respect, and then we'll have a group discussion. So, um, Shakhsani Keek, I'll hand it over to you to let you share what you had wanted to share with the class.
Yeah, it's been a big concern in this family, and the pain that we experience by hearing about children in the news. That's that is so terrible. Uh, how they're terribly involved uh, with a 6-year-old that brought a gun and shot the principal, uh, and disobedience and uh, everything like that that they should have learned at home. It can't be taught at school. So from the time that we were little, my brother and I had a younger brother, we were taught Haya'aune, Haya'aune. And it was kind of interesting to me that the sermon this weekend from the minister was about kindness. And we got into a discussion about what's the difference between kindness and respect. And so, because the white people have two terms, respect to them, that means, so this is a mistake we make, we want to teach something about respect. We know what it means in our language and in our society, how it's to be handled. But in a white man's thinking, respect is like you say Mr. and Mrs. And you say the title of the people that's working with you, and you listen politely and things like that. But to us, respect it's deeper than that. We have to realize that as young people growing up, we had to show it, the kindness that goes along with it. My younger brother and I, we used to earn money by carrying water for people because the water was only in the streets and people didn't have running water in their house. So if we were lucky, we could find a lady that's going to do her laundry. So that means quite a few pennies to carry water for her. So just as this is almost every time my dad was aware of us going out, um, he would say, be sure that when you come to the old people, you don't charge them. You do things for them, but don't charge them. So we kept that in mind. Of course, as you guys all know, a village, we don't accidentally go to a house where there's old people. We knew where everybody lived. So we would go to the house and check on some old people. And they're so happy to see us. And sometimes I'd sweep the floor for them, bring them fresh water. My brother was real good with a hatchet, so he would chop up some kindling wood and bring it in and stack it up for them. And sometimes they would say, run to the store and get some eggs or a can of milk or something, that they have trouble getting. And then as we were leaving, the man would reach in his pocket and try to give us money, but we never took it. So it was all part of our training as children. And as Anna mentioned, I learned the hard way that if my dad kept repeating something, that means I wasn't listening the first time, and he noticed it. So he would say it over again, tell the same thing over, a story that had applied to how we should act towards each other and what we should watch what we say. And like I appreciate Anna mentioning the fact that the children of today have a very short attention span. 8 minutes of a program and 10 minutes uh, of selling something, commercials. So they have that break every time. They don't have it continuous like I did because we had to sit and listen to stories with no commercials and about how, as young people, we should act and watch. It applies to how we act, what we say, uh, listening and paying attention, and don't uh, start asking a lot of questions. You're supposed to listen and learn. That it's appreciated by the white people for kids that can ask a lot of questions. Oh, that's really a smart kid. But as a teacher, I was told by other teachers, the Native kids are really quiet. They never say anything. but that's the way we learned, you know. Uh, we did a lot of listening. No comments yet because they wanted you to have time to think about what what was said. So, because of our concern for the young people today, we want to talk about hayaune to uh, how can we pass that on today, realizing the shortcomings we have with the children, because this should be taught by their parents, and I'm kind of wondering if maybe the parents should um, be included. I'm not sure how we can do this because of the everybody busy working, trying to make a living with the very uh, things that are very expensive. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe if we're culturally involved in the schools, to bring that forth to the children, um, and to talk to them about uh, this thing that we call kaya, because it's different than showing respect. I think it's in our way of thinking, it's a combination of being kind and being respectful, those two together. So I hope that you'll be thinking uh, about this, and how can we pass it on to not just our children, if your children are already grown, but if you have grandchildren, how can they be taught? The parents are probably really busy trying to make a living. Sometimes then it's left up to the grandparents to do the teaching. So ideas, thoughts, and uh, because I hope that a lot of us are involved in trying to teach the culture. Uh, I know there's a lot of effort being made to teach the language, but what's behind it is really important as to what's behind the language, this culture, this almost hidden thing now that that we are faced with children, and it's not like a punishment. Okay, sit down, and I'm going to tell you how to be respectful. That's not. Uh, I don't think it's a good approach to the children because they quit listening to them. But it used to be a softer approach. Is like, uh, I want to tell you a story about this boy that said things he shouldn't have, and what it cost his family because he wasn't, things like that, you know. And the story is told, and you can't ask questions, no questions, just think, you know. So uh, how can we uh, embed that in the teachings today of, uh, to our children, so that uh, when they start to grow up and they're mixed up because it's such a rough time, uh, that they have something to fall back on in regards to uh, the other human beings that they have a contact with. So I hope it'll be a good thinking and discussion uh, to try to put together ideas that we were taught as children, and I think it's important for today. And I feel so sorry for the children in the news and the trouble they get into. I wish the family, uh, for the good Lord to bless them uh, because of either the loss or the trouble the child has gotten into. So that's why we want to talk about this. How can we uh, pass this on like the old people used to, in regards to in our society what we call the kayahune, uh, and the white people call respect, but I think respect doesn't go far enough. It's a combination, like I said, with kindness. Yeah, well,
Okay, gonna chisha inki nige kaya wine that um, that's that's really good. Thank you for sharing with us about kaya wine or respect for people and to open it up for discussion. Um, we'd like to hear from class. How did you learn respect? How were you taught? And what are some ideas you have about how we could pass it on to the younger generations? So you can raise your hand or just unmute your mic and speak as you're comfortable. Um, don't feel like you have to have a whole speech put together, but just like let's put our heads together and some of the ideas. Shakuin.
I was taught some from my parents, but also by my grandparents on both my father's side and my mother's side of the family. Both of them actually did do a whole lot to teach me about respect. Funny enough, my father's side of the family, they're all white, but my mother's side of the family is Lingit and Filipino. And it was her side of the family that probably taught me the most about respect. And it probably is largely due to a lot of the Tlingit learning. Um, my mother grew up with her grandmother who only spoke Tlingit. Um, but I unfortunately don't know what's going on with the kids we see in the news today, but I have noticed that with my own children's schools, they are trying to teach them both respect and kindness. And I do a lot at home with the type of books that I read them. I find books that talk about treating each other with respect and treating each other with kindness. So that's some of the ways I use to help teach my children.
Mm. Okay, that's really good, Miss Chish.
gee,
Couple more hands up. Skinya. Oh, shucks, Nikki, you want to mention something?
no, I was just thanking
Mm.
her for her thoughts.
Yeah, aware. Okay, gonna Shakuin. Skinya Tla, you have your hand up as well.
Yakei Satini. So
Uh,
I immediately went to the thought that so much of who we are is inherently a part of us already. If we've already had generations before us that have learned um, these traditional values in the generations before us, then it becomes a part of us as well. Hatu Yeti, for example, it is already inside of us, but it's always a wonderful thing if we have role models as well. And I feel like I had a great role model who was my father and non-native, but the subject of respect is something that I speak to my grandchildren about regularly. So it's reinforcing those values. Good enough, Chish.
Yeah,
Ik kunach ik kunachtish skinyata. Skyde.
I'm gonna change. Uh, just when everyone was talking, I really pictured like growing up and who was pretty integral to me learning this respect, and it was Taku Kla Yudusagun, so late Pearl Keenan. In Clinkett Way, she was my younger sister, so she always took care. I took care of her as much as I could, but she always made sure to um, keep me on par by teaching me these lessons through a lot of stories, actually. And then by actually doing things, um, she wanted me to always kind of do these tasks that were kind of like that I think of now as like kind of building up my backpack of tools. So she'd be like, oh, you did this for that, and you did this to kind of build up to that. And fortunately, um, she kind of helped me to go through my first moon time and like fixed me up for this respect. And I think that was a pretty integral part for me, and I'm really honored for her to do that because it was um, it's kind of like it set me up for the rest of my life in teaching me like respect pretty hard for those that first time of my life. And she actually like moved in and lived with me for that time, so to have that was pretty integral for me today.
Kuzi. Ik
Fish.
kunachtish. Ik kunach ik. Kachtu.
Well, the way I learned about it was growing up in Craig and then in Ketchikan. The way I learned about respect was by learning about who the community was. Just for example, in our gatherings, like the generosity and the way people treated each other and greeted, and there was a lot of kindness expressed in that. Sharing food together, that's another expression of respect. And then after my dad died, the extended family gathered up around us, and we learned about respect in the way they treated us and their kindness and generosity for us as individuals and as a family. So I think it's in the everyday way we talk and speak to each other. There's just so much kindness and, generosity. Recognition of others in the community. So thank you for asking that question. I think I'll give another example. After my dad died, my uncle came and like well, all my aunties and uncles, but at this particular time, my uncle was under the house. He was working on something. And I was up in the living room and I was really angry about something. I was trying to put something together or whatever. And I was like, I was a teenager.
Did we lose Kachtu or is my internet? Am I frozen?
No, we lost her.
Sound like
Here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we
fading
lost
in
you for a
and out.
second, but yeah.
I wasn't sure what happened.
You were in the living room.
Can you hear
Oh,
us?
okay. Yes, I can. The signal.
We lost her. She must have the connectivity must not be coming through for her right now.
I hope you can.
But
I think
we'll
I'm gonna leave it. I think I'm gonna leave it at that because of the connection. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, we heard
In and out.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah. Well, I want to
It's
personally
kind of-
thank you for bringing that out because the people, the older people, our grandparents, our uncles, our aunts, and other people in the village were really good examples of showing respect and how it's done. So we had a lot of examples growing up to teach us. That was, I think, a real good teaching system is the way we treated each other. So thank you for bringing that out, Ganashish.
Thank you. May I just give like a one sentence version of what I was going to say?
Mm-hmm.
It's a specific example of how my uncle taught me. He was under the house and I was like angry and like throwing things, like I was trying to put something together and he heard me saying certain things that were not allowed in my home. And I didn't know he could hear me, but he came out from under, he was working on something under the house. He came up and he was very respectful in the way he talked to me. And he really told me in very specific ways about how my behavior and words were not acceptable. So to me, that's an example of a very specific way of teaching me and guiding me. And so even today, like that was like whatever, decades ago. And I remember that to the day. So that's a kind of, so I just think collectively we learn respect, but then very individually, like he had to take time out of what he was doing to
Yeah.
come up and teach me. So I'm really grateful. Goodness, Chish.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, we had family members or even people from the village who are on the lookout for stuff like that could speak up, especially those that are kind of related to you to speak up and say, that's not right. You should say that. Their parents wouldn't like it, things like that. So, yeah, that's a very good point you made about other people being examples to you. Goodness, Chish.
Mm.
Goodness,
Okay.
Chish.
Kunakite. Goodness teach. Hayash.
I just want to mention one thing. This idea that the introduction of TVs and phones and screens into our lives, and having some type of limitation on those so that they don't overwhelm the rest of our lives. That's I know I grew up with restrictions on days and how much time and I could spend on any TV at the time, but even having that, it becomes more important as these screens become more easily accessed, and then they just sort of take up people's time and priorities, and so that there's it's not as much available time to listen to other people, which is where
Yeah.
we learn our culture.
Yeah. And I've seen on the plane, I've seen 4-year-olds busy working with computers and on phones. So you're right. There is a source that's kind of overpowering the parenting situation. That's a good point, Gunachish.
Uh,
Kunachik egonachtish. There's a mention in the chat that social media as well, in addition to games or shows on screen, social media is another big consumer of our time. It can shorten our attention spans for sure.
I heard that some of the games have really bad language, which isn't good. That somebody just mentioned saying things that they're not supposed to, but it's kind of like, okay, it's okay since you're here on the games for kids. So we do have a big battle. We have a big battle because it's important that the lesson in school about being respectful in the way that we mean it is taught every day, not just like every Tuesday or every other Friday or something. So even the songs that we sing is to respect our fathers, respect our mothers, respect our aunties, you know. So it just plays into everything. So that's really important.
Okay. I'm hearing Caltag these last 2 weeks for our memorial potlatch. We call it Hia. And I'll go over to my auntie's place next door, and they're hosting Grandma Margaret Agnes. And she's just good about teaching. Like for me, since I didn't grow up in the village my dad is from, I have a lot to learn about how to properly put away our loved ones who passed on, how to prepare food, how to properly do things for our ceremony so that it's done the right way. And she's just so good about it. Like if she sees me doing something kind of funny, she'll say koi and correct me. Koi means like grandchild. And she teases me too, which makes it fun. Like I always grew up loving to be teased because in our family that was like how you show your love for somebody. But like at one point I was, to illustrate, I was like doing dishes pretty busy for a long time trying to keep up with my aunties who were baking and cooking and making fish ice cream and cutting up moods like all at once, and I'm busily doing the dishes trying to keep up. And there was a moment where I was like paused and I didn't know what to do because my auntie needed the sink for something. She had some meat in there and I needed the sink to do dishes. And I had a glitch in my mind where I was staring at it, not knowing what to do. And she saw me and she just goes, "What you gonna do now?" And it just made me laugh because it kind of broke me out of this like, oh, I got to do this. This thing's in my way, and she just, I don't know. She's good about that. So just adding to like the way grandmas sometimes know how to teach you and keep you moving, but in a good way.
Lift you up.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to listen to Mr. George Ramus. He suddenly began to tell the story about showing respect. And so we wanted you to hear what he says for further discussion. Do we have time? Still have time for him?
Yeah, okay. I could, let's see, we're at 12:42, so I could at least play 10 or 15 minutes of it. And then we could finish the other half on Thursday.
Okay.
Does that sound okay? Okay. So I'm gonna play this video that we had started to play when we had our guest speakers, Dach Tu'us and Kai. And we had Judy, Ramos, and Kai in our class. So here we go.
Ya kunach away ausaku hashing get yochatam. Wash dech des shuwachichen Uchana ya ututlatin way movie aya wush jihu kakajakti wush has khawsha adata way ya tlingit posti ye kashlingit yochatam. Stukla khatati at your goodie. Ach kap benis cheese away. Ach tuasago has to eat a ton. Adat aya chatakataya et tuasago adat haposti kaha yuchatam. Benis cheese plain aya benis cheese. Eat koha aya yidat. Ye skun wani aya benis cheese. Okay.
Toasi kugana shishi of Sakai on Yatsi. Ha itikau suk, the one who's going to come after us. Ujayu deneyu Gotkena Kish. The respect between the two clans is slowly disappearing. If you were born in the year that I was born, you would have learned it. I'm going to speak English and Tlingit,
Okay.
because I'm sure that most of you are not thorough with the Tlingit language. I feel sad about what happened here. I am one of the scholars for Alaska. When they have a problem, they call a meeting of the scholars. And we try to teach them what happened a long time ago. In my home, Yakutat, there was still a respect due to when I was born, when I was small. I can tell this whole thing in Tlingit. It would confuse you as you go along. But when I was 4 years old, my mother decided that we'd leave Yakutat and come to Juneau. And I started school in Juneau, 6 years old. The school, as maybe you know, the Indian village. Right by the A&B Hall, there's this house with got all kinds of totem poles and stuff in there. That was the school that I started in. And 6.5 years old, my mother said, well, you gotta go home. You gotta go back to Yakutat. And I remember the day the boat came in, Alaska steamship came in, and I climbed up halfway to the mountain, up to that where the train used to come across with all the rocks and stuff. And that was the crusher. Crush all those rocks and take the gold out of it. And then these, and there, take it out in the bay, and this great big scar would turn over like that when they pull the plug in. After it goes down, and then they pump it out. and I used to stand there and watch it. But my mother told me that I had to go to Yakutat. And in a way, it was one of the great blessings in my life. Because my uncle was 14 years old when he danced in Sitka. What happened is the governor of the state of territory of Alaska said there will be no more dancing, there will be no more potlatches. Right behind him, not very long, I guess it was the missionaries that told the governor that there will be people coming through here to teach the way you have a God. And we found out that our way of living, to know that there is something above us, the Spirit above us in them days. And we rendered it. But it wasn't long after that the Bureau of Indian Affairs came in and built a school. And you used to get punished for speaking Tlingit around the school. I know firsthand, because after I went to the BIA school and back to Yakutat, I too was forbidden to speak my language. And the next time you got caught, you got whipped with shaving strap, leather. And if you got caught again, then you went down to the stock lane to chop wood, all after school was out. And the shed didn't have any lights in it. I remember that very well. I will never forget it for my whole life. But I kept speaking my language, Tlingit, because my uncle was very traditional, hot jaw. My Tlingit name is Wuchchuhuij. And if everybody had a rope, if we had a rope here and everybody held on to it, that's what it means. You hang on to it. But after my uncle died, they gave me 2 more names because of what I had accomplished. I was the last one in Yakutat who grew up in his uncle's house. And my uncle, like I told you, is very traditional. You do the respect to all the elders. You help all the elders. And you help all the little ones that's coming up behind you. You take their hand. And you live by the creed that was given to young men from the time they were 6.5, 7, and going into 8. You could go and live with your uncle. You don't live with your family because your family is going to make you lazy. That's what they believed then. And that's the way I grew up. I learned the parable stories, a lot of the parable stories. I learned the way the raven taught us. And Raven was always trying to wrangle some way, somehow, wrangle food from people. And as I started working for the airline, I traveled part through Europe. I started part through the Far East. But then I discovered something in London. I went down to the Towers of London, they call it. And the Towers of London is where all the crown jewelry is. All the crown hat, capes, batons, the door on that building is as small as that steel door, that thick. Once you step inside of there, you cannot stop walking. You have to go through there, but at that same time, you're trying to see everything that the king and queen use. And when you come out the other side, down at the lawn, there's some beef eater guards there. They got that flat hat on top. It carries all the, look like they carry a spear and their long tonic. I was watching them, then I noticed something in the back of them. And I had to walk all the way across there and ask them, how come you're guarding those ravens? There was ravens in those cages. And the guy said to me, we here in England believe that if those ravens disappear from there, Britain's going to fall in the hands of an enemy.
Okay, I want to keep playing this video, but I'm gonna pause it because I need to be able to show you the article that we'd like you to read for Thursday. So I'm gonna see if I can drag it in the chat. Let's see if that. Okay, I just put it in the chat. It's a PDF called Lingit Protocols. And just to give you a preview of what it looks like, I'll open it up. This is an article by Kajakte Walter Sobola. And so just kind of taking everything we talked about today.
Dr. Sobel. Didn't he have a title?
Thank you, Gunafchish, Dr. Yeowa Gunafchish, Dr. Walter Sobola. So here's the article, and if folks need access to it, you can also find it on our online learning platform. If you go into our class, I uploaded it in today's class. So today's week 13, day 1. I'll just quickly show you on our online learning platform Tovuti where you can find it. So if you go into our course and scroll all the way down into the spring classes, here at the very bottom one is week 13, day 1. And if you select it, you can see it right on the front page where we usually have our slides. Just scroll down and there's an article I uploaded. And it says homework, read, Lingit Protocols by Kajakte, Dr. Walter Sobola. So just like you to read that before Thursday, and then on Thursday we'll continue our discussion. But I just wanted to close by saying Gunafchish Tekadyuhan Ha'inki Migi you Katangi we Kayawune dot. So thank you everybody for sharing about how you learned respect And I wanted to ask, we still have a couple minutes left, if Shakhsani Keek had any closing thoughts or comments she wanted to share.
Yeah, we want the class to think about how we can use it in today's society, and it's possibly kind of hard to reach the parents of the young people today, but if it's taught in schools, I think we need to encourage that. But if you can think of ways, a lot of us had good examples. Dr. Sobolev calls it protocol, but all these words kind of mean the same thing, and think it about about how we treat each other. So that's really important.
Oh, okay. Any questions or comments from the class before we close? If not, then we'll continue on Thursday. Shakhsani Keek will be traveling on Thursday, so it will be us. And we'll continue this discussion. Hopefully we'll be able to finish the video by George Ramos, Wush Jihu Ish. We learned some Lingit terms today that we can continue to talk about. And there were also some in the video that I would like to add to these. And so that's probably what our day will look like on Thursday. But Gunachish Yi Jinei Stekatiuhan Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again.
We're handing you a really big subject. I hope that.
Yeah.
So I hope that you're well and you're going to think about it, going to choose.